So good evening. My name is Irene, and this is my colleague.
Igneri Gonzalez.
And today we're going to be talking about culturally, linguistic, and relevant texts. In this presentation,
The purpose of this presentation is to explore and analyze what culturally relevant text and culturally linguistically entails, what effects it has in the classroom, as well as how it can be implemented in the classroom.
and basically the objective of this presentation is to create a review of literature that's based on the findings of the investigations that we conducted throughout the semester, as well as apply our newly gathered knowledge gained from our teaching practices.
Now, why we chose this topic? For me, basically, it all started in my master's. We've learned so many things, and I think I first was interested in motivation and how to motivate students to participate. And there was a time that I was taking a course and we discussed an article related to culturally relevant texts and the importance of including them in our classes. And I think that culturally relevant texts can motivate students to learn and participate because it gives them the opportunity to express their thoughts. And I think them having a piece of their own in their classroom will allow them to do so many things. And not all text makes sense when I was in school, and I'm hoping my students can have a better, more relevant learning experience than the one I had.
Basically, as for me, it started as an uninformed opinion because I thought I knew what it meant of using a relevant text in the classroom. But I began to grow more curious as I realized it wasn't as easy evaluating which texts were more relevant than the other. And so I realized that I needed to learn more about it, and in order to become a teacher that is more tailored, I guess, to my students, then this was something that I needed to do. Uh, and just like Igneri, in order for my students to learn better and to be more comfortable in the classroom. So first off, we're going to discuss some key definitions. What are culturally relevant texts? Basically, it's defined as a text with which children can make deep personal connections. The primary characters remind children of themselves and their families and neighborhoods. Uh, Perhaps you would be better understand it with this following definition, in which it refers to text that reflects the student's life experiences. In other words, this allows for them to be able to transport into other worlds that are similar to theirs, but not entirely similar either.
The next definition is linguistically relevant texts, which are texts that incorporate both students L1 and L2 in a variety of activities that focus on language proficiency. And the next one is cultural competence, which indicates an understanding on the part of teachers that they have been socialized into understanding the surrounding world within a particular set of norms that may or may not mirror those in which the students were socialized.
So basically, cultural competence entails being respectful towards your students, being open-minded, having high expectations of your students, doing a lot of self-reflection, and encouraging at all times critical thinking.
It all comes to the end game of culturally, linguistically, and relevant teaching, which is what teachers are aiming for in the classroom. And these were some of our findings.
So the effects of implementing culturally relevant text in a lesson affects read alouds, comprehension activities, classroom discussions, as well as small group discussions.
If we implement all this in the students' learning experiences, students will be more motivated, more talkative. They will share their experiences based on their backgrounds. They will be more willing to learn also from other students. Um, yeah, that basically what it all.
So how to implement culturally relevant text in a lesson? For strategies, the thing that is most recommended to do in under any scenario is to get to know your students, because this is essentially the storyline for you to be able to pinpoint which culturally relevant text to use in the classroom.
Exactly. And some struggles that we may encounter in our lesson could be high expectations, standard English, and discriminatory attitudes. This basically falls into the idea that there's a perfect English to teach our students. And by setting high expectations, sometimes students may struggle or feel um, defeated while learning the second language.
The end goal is to essentially become culturally competent, and this entails a process of self reflection by asking yourself, who are you? Who are your students? And what do you believe in? As mentioned earlier, part of being culturally competent involves avoiding discriminatory and exclusive attitudes that some teachers may have towards their students. And this is mentioned in Howard's article, um, as well as training and studying as a pre-service teacher, which may involve a lot of reading and practicing. And here's a list of culturally relevant texts that you may check out later after the presentation.
Well, what else would we like to know? Basically, after reading all these articles, we would like to know about more articles reading in Spanish. Maybe we can learn about other perspectives towards culturally relevant texts. Also, have more articles related to Puerto Rico and how we will implement those texts. Know more historical backgrounds because we we're not able to find like a specific time where all this terminology started, and I think it's very important that we can just uh, focus on that also.
So the conclusions, what can you take away from this presentation is to essentially um, the fact that you apply or you implement culturally relevant texts into your classroom, it allows students to become more engaged in the lesson, in their learning process, and that's pretty much ultimately the end game of being a teacher.
Yeah, and also there's some type of ambiguity with this term, and I think it's important that we can focus more on these concepts and find more studies, research more about culturally relevant texts. So these are our references. Thanks everyone for your attention. Have a nice evening.